at Larry Merchant's house. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
I've gotten a bunch of emails and forum posts about what to ask Mr. Merchant, and of course about 90% of them were Larry Merchant, Floyd Mayweather Jr., what happened, and you know, a bunch of these came up just so you guys can see. This is the fight that should have happened but never did. Nonetheless, we got to see a little preview on Saturday. So, Mr. Merchant, I guess we'll start with your thoughts on the outcome of the fight. Legal, illegal?
I've been calling it a legal sucker punch.
A legal sucker punch.
The definition of a sucker punch is hitting another guy when he's not looking or prepared, but it was legal. And so Ortiz made a mistake and he paid for it. Now, one question in the air is, just because you have the right to do it, is it right to do it?
Right.
That's for the fans to decide.
Did you see any flaw in the way Cortez acted before?
It was a chaotic situation in the ring. I don't think any of us has seen quite that sequence of events: foul, apology, sucker punch, legal. I don't think he saw the first punch. I think the pictures clearly showed that. One opinion is he should have sent the two fighters back to their neutral corners again, and that would have avoided something. In hindsight, yes. But we saw what we saw, and there was an honest, emotional response to it.
Well, Ortiz, after the hook, Ortiz still failed to protect himself. There was
It happened too quickly. Of all of his failings and mistakes in the previous 30 seconds or so,
Right.
that is not one of them.
That's not one of them.
No.
Why do you? I know you weren't at the post-fight press conference, but you've seen the videos. Why was Ortiz so happy, almost like he didn't mind the outcome?
You know, as we pointed out several times in pre-fight shows and before the fight itself, one of the ways he copes with life is by trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, trying to turn the cheek. Well, being Mr. Nice Guy and turning the cheek doesn't work in the ring.
Right.
And he was embarrassed by the foul, for which he properly was penalized, and acted in a way that backfired.
Right. So, do you think that the way Floyd ended this fight do you think that the outcome of this fight is going to be one of the negative parts of Floyd's legacy? I mean, he did win the fight, but will this be the fight people talk about?
I think certainly that there's drama there. There is very little drama we can point to looking back at Mayweather's career. He's been precise and efficient and calculating and more or less risk-free. And here was this emotional climax to a big fight.
Right. Where does Ortiz go from here?
I think he is fortunate that he has some obvious opponents out there. He is probably better known now than he's ever been. He can go and fight a rematch with Maidana, which would be big. He could fight a rematch with Berto.
Right.
both excellent original fights. He can fight Brandon Rios, one of the top lightweights in the world, who is a blood sworn enemy of
Right,
his. They
right.
come from the same town in Kansas. Those are pretty good options for crowd-pleasing events. If he should fight one or two of them and look really good,
Mm.
then he can try to get back in the ring with Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, however it turns out.
All right. Have you? There was an article a couple of days ago, actually about a week ago, when Manuel Stewart talked about the reason behind the Lewis Klitschko rematch never happening. Did you happen to know that it was actually Lewis's wife that who gave him the ultimatum, her or the fight?
I think I may have heard that once in the past. I think it turned out in terms of his reputation as a good thing. He ended his great career on a high note in the best big heavyweight fight we've had in a decade at least. And he seems to have the resources to not have to go back to fight.
Right.
So it didn't end badly, but it did it unusually in the sense that I can only think of two fighters who retired when they could make 8-figure paydays. Hagler, after the Leonard fight, who didn't want a rematch, and Lennox Lewis, after he fought Vitaly Klitschko.
But do you think, despite the fact that he actually ended on a good note, and a lot of fans, I mean, he was behind on all the scorecards.
I'm sorry. You strike out twice and you hit a home run in the ninth inning, you're a hero. You won the game. And I think in hindsight, boxing fans appreciate him more than they did through much of his active career.
Okay. Who was your favorite fighter to interview throughout your entire career?
Whoa.
I know it's been many years, but I'm sure there has to be at least one person that comes to mind right away.
You know, actually, I don't remember. I think the most important interview I ever did after a fight was with Buster Douglas after he upset Mike Tyson, in which it took him 20 or more seconds to pull himself together. He was so emotional because of him and his mother having died a few weeks before. And it was electric with nothing happening.
Right.
I mean, something was happening, but we just waited patiently, and he wanted to be interviewed. He wanted to talk to the world.
Well, everything was happening actually at that moment in time. It's just
Yeah, and
he was on pause.
people were pulling him from behind. Let's go back, because they understood how this moment was. I've had fun with Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
We've had some back and forths. And then one time on camera, after he says, Larry, we ought to take this show on the road. So I think fighters, basically, even though it's coming off the heat of battle, it's hard what they do, nothing harder. They do want to talk to the fans.
Right.
And they like it. They may not particularly want to be grilled about what happened in the third round and why were you penalized and whatever, but they want to give their side of the story.
Right.
They want to communicate with fans. And Prince Nassim was terrific.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was almost Ali-like in his ability to communicate, to pick up signals from the audience and run with a question to wherever he wanted to take it, often in an amusing way. There have been a lot.
All right. Actually, one person asked, how do you feel Max Kellerman is doing as far as his commentating career, analyst? Did you have any part in him becoming?
I had nothing to do with Max coming to HBO. Max was an established star of cable television and perhaps radio, and HBO decided that I wasn't going to live forever, and they brought him into town.
How do you think he's doing?
I
mean, you're the person to ask.
No, I'm not the person to ask, because he and I are colleagues, and I like Max, and
Except you
I
only
think
have a
he
couple
does
of
a good
decades of
job.
experience on him. That's why.
Well, yeah, maybe a little bit more experience, both on and off camera.
Right. Okay. Oh, well. So David Hayes back on screen, claiming he's ready to knock out Vitaly Klitschko now. Do you think he deserves the paycheck? I mean,
David A. has no credibility at this moment. If he wants to fight another title holder, Vitaly Klitschko, let him go out, fight a couple of fights, and prove that he's really serious about fighting, so that people know they will have spent their money and their time well to watch him in a fight again.
right. I saw him at the Mayweather Ortiz fight, and I asked him, you know, what do you think is gonna happen? What do you think is gonna be a different, you know, besides your toe, if it's functioning well, what do you think is gonna happen? What difference will we see? Well, he was really proud of the fact that he didn't get knocked out. And he said, well, Vladimir said he could knock me out, and he didn't. And I said, so does that mean now, because Vladimir didn't knock you out, you're going to knock his brother out?
I think he thought he was in a 5,000 meter race. He was not in a prize fight in that fight. I also think that if he wanted to show us a body part for why he lost that fight, he should have dropped his trunks and his protector.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's, I don't know if, I don't know. Well, Vitaly said that he is interested in fighting him, and he will give him a shot because he wants to knock him out. So, unfortunately, I think it actually might happen.
The magic word was unfortunately,
Right.
and maybe that has to do with the depth or shallowness of the heavyweight division, or that there's some sort of narrative, even negative narrative there. But it seems bizarre to me that anyone would pay to see David Haye fight anyone named Klitschko
Right.
until he's proven that he wants to be a serious fighter again.
All right, and another fan asked about the Mosley-Pacquiao fight. Do you think that Mosley was there collecting a paycheck, or do you think that he, after getting hit with a couple of shots by Pacquiao, he felt the power and decided to go into his little defensive cocoon?
I think he came into the fight thinking he could win. That's what great old champions always do. And then it wasn't just the power of Pacquiao, it was the quickness and cleverness, that he couldn't see where the punches were coming from, that he couldn't respond. This is a common trope among veteran fighters. Bernard Hopkins is a remarkable character in boxing, but when he faced Joe Calzaghe, he wasn't so remarkable. He put up a good fight, but Calzaghe was younger and quicker. And the same thing with Jermaine Taylor. So he saw what happened. He had never been in a fight quite like that. He's obviously past his prime. He obviously wanted a paycheck, but and found a way to get it based on his history of being one of the best fighters of his time. And Pacquiao, as he has done with others, is too quick and clever for these slightly bigger guys, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't seem to be able to hurt him, to get to him, or to slow him up, to use their size advantage over him.
Right. Do you think most? I've heard a lot of people mentioning maybe now Ortiz could fight Mosley. A waste of time for Ortiz, right?
You know, I think, yes, there are good fights against live opponents that are very beatable by Ortiz. Shane Mosley, after his last two fights, I love the guy and what he was. If he wants to keep fighting, it's a free country. And if I don't want to watch him, it's a free country.
Time to hang up those gloves, huh?
Well, I don't tell guys to hang up their gloves. They're liable to tell me to hang up my mic. Okay?
Right.
But I just don't have to watch it. And they don't have to watch me if they think I'm past my prime.
Right. Well, okay. Marquez, Pacquiao coming up. 144. Too heavy for Marquez?
Well, I think the conventional wisdom, which I agree with on this occasion, is that when Marquez was smaller and younger and quicker, he was able to neutralize some of the quickness of Pacquiao and fight the hell out of him, you know, almost on even terms. He got knocked down 4 times in the 2 fights. In the end, that's why he didn't get decisions. But now he's older and he's fighting Pacquiao, who has gradually moved up to being a welterweight and a strong welterweight. It's a relatively easy call. You don't ever dismiss a fighter of Marquez's quality, but I think that this is a very tough assignment for him.
Yeah, I think the weight will be the difference here. And so you probably pick...
Pacquiao is a favorite,
Right.
and he should be.
Yeah. Okay. Were you even? I'm just. Were you surprised to see Berto lose to Ortiz when their fight happened?
I wasn't totally surprised. Ortiz was a decided underdog for obvious reasons. Didn't have much chance to, before you can change your mind, whatever you thought, because it happened very quickly in the first round, and over the course of the fight, we found that Berto didn't know how to fight him on the inside.
Right.
And Ortiz just was beating him to the body and winning the fight, and I thought it was a great comeback story for a 24-year-old fighter to establish himself.
Boxing itself as a sport, is it on a rise, static, is it in decline? Where do you see it going?
You know, we're always taking the temperature of boxing. It's not the mainstream sport it once was. It never will be again. It's a more international sport than it used to be. American fighters dominated it for a long time in the 20th century. Various ethnic and racial persuasions dominated it at different times. Now it's Latinos, and particularly Mexican or Mexican American fighters, but also there are some very good, outstanding Asian fighters, Japanese and Thai fighters. There are very good European fighters. The Klitschko's dominate the heavyweight division for a decade. So the landscape has changed. Boxing still has its devoted followers. It's a very lively corpse, as I like to say, because a few times a year it pops out and transcends just the hardcore fighters with a big event. Hardcore fans, I should say. And it has 3 or 4 live television, cable boxing events a week. And every once in a while, people remember the tradition and connect to fighters. Today, the welterweights are like the heavyweights used to be in America. But 40, 50, 60,000 people turning up in soccer stadiums to watch some fights abroad. 1 million and more, sometimes much more pay-per-views, generating extraordinary revenues. So, boxing, I like to tell people it's like radio when television came. Radio didn't disappear.
Right.
It just had a different role.
Right.
It's like newspapers with the internet coming. Newspapers in print matter aren't going to disappear. They will just have a different role in a different way. And so is boxing.
Okay. What is your favorite weight division?
Well, right now, the welterweights are where most of the action is, from 140 to 147. There are some good junior middleweights, speaking of which, I'm going to Atlantic City to see Sergio Martinez, recognized as one of the best fighters in the world, a middleweight champion, who also can fight at 54 or less, he says. And I'm looking forward very much to seeing him, because he is an exceptional athlete. And Andy Lee and Vera in a rematch of what was a big upset a few years ago. Hey, it's not one that will grab the casual fan in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Right.
And believe me, I had calls from radio station in Lincoln, Nebraska over the Mayweather-Ortiz brouhaha. But hey, it's going to be a good, fun show, I think.
As far as Martinez goes, do you think there's a possibility of him going down in the weight a little bit, and if Mayweather-Pacquiao doesn't work out, maybe he can take Mayweather's place?
It seems highly unlikely. There are, for them to fight a big, strong, athletic guy when they can fight so many other fighters in those weight classes and in legitimate fights and make tremendous amounts of money. One of the reasons that Mayweather and Pacquiao hasn't happened is that they make so much money for fighting other fighters who they think are easier opponents, and who come relatively cheaply, that it's almost a disincentive for them at this point in time to face each other.
Right.
Eventually they will, I believe. I've been wrong like everybody else before.
Well, there's too much money in it. It's got to happen.
Yeah. But as far as Martinez, customarily, when a fighter cleans out a division, so to speak, he steps up
Right.
to super middleweights.
Right.
But he's reluctant to do that, and maybe he'll be forced to. What will he have to lose? He can lose a fight, but if he were to fight, say, Andre Ward, big event, he'd make some good money. If he lost the fight, he fought a bigger, younger guy, and he goes back to being recognized as the middleweight champion. But right now, that's not their plan.
All right. Who do you consider the top boxing trainer of all time? And as far as current trainers go, the camera a little bit. As far as the current trainers go, who do you consider your favorite or best?
Well, I think that it's clear that the hot trainers at the moment are Freddie Roach and Emmanuel Stewart, who have most of, or more than anybody else among the top fighters in the world. And I don't know how to rank trainers. Emmanuel Stewart is an amazing figure who boxed, who trains, who manages, acts as a cut man,
Right.
the whole
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And Freddie Roach is also an amazing character. So those are the two ones who were highlighted at this moment. Everybody who has a fighter who isn't performing as well as they hopes that one of those two guys will fix it.
Right. Well, what about looking back in time?
You know, my mind goes to Angelo Dundee
Angelo Dundee, you know?
because of he was with Ali and he was Ray Leonard, and not too many trainers have been with too many better fighters than that.
Right.
And Customato, who was an extraordinary figure many years ago when he developed Mike Tyson, and he had Floyd Patterson, another heavyweight champion, from the start of their careers. Those are the ones that come to mind. And another one would be Gil Clancy, who trained Emil Griffith, welterweight, middleweight champion, numbers of other fighters, was also at one time the promoter at Madison Square Garden, and also an important figure in boxing, not just as a trainer.
I like Eddie Futch a lot. I think
Eddie Futch. Forgot Eddie Futch. Dear guy, outstanding trainer, who passed his wisdom along
Freddie.
to anyone who would take it, and Freddie Roach was one of them.
Freddie Roach was the one, right? I think some time ago I've heard you say that you thought that maybe Kelly Pavlik was one of the hardest hitters in his weight division. What do you think he should do to get himself back in the ring and, you know, back on the track?
Well, I think he was a compelling, young fighter, fought in a crowd-pleasing style, not a one-punch great puncher.
Right.
Smart kid, in the ring, out of the ring, had big, huge plans or fantasies about what could become of his career, and lost a couple of fights to two outstanding fighters and went off the track. And how badly he wants to come back, that's something, you know, it's unusual. Some fighters make enough money that they don't feel the incentive, the need to come back. And I mean, he seems to be trying to somehow work his way back. It would be good for boxing if he did, and if he showed that he still has the hunger. And I hope that happens.
Yeah, I think that lost his confidence.
If one fight does that to you,
Right.
then you weren't meant to be there a long time.
Right.
A lot of great fighters lost fights, and got knocked out.
Right.
Wasn't it hurts physically, mentally, emotionally. You're judged in a fight. Not if you get knocked down, but what do you do next? You're judged in your career if you lose. What do you do next? If next for him is he can't make it back, then that will speak for itself.
Right. I think it was just maybe the fact that Hopkins was so much older, and you know.
I think their people made a mistake by making that fight, in the sense that he, though he was younger than Hopkins, had the perfect style for a veteran fighter.
Right.
Because he wasn't going to try to beat him with quickness. He was an aggressive fighter, just in the same sense that Margarito had the perfect style for Mosley.
Right. Give him a lot of opportunities during their fight.
To look 10 years younger instead of 10 years older.
Right. Right. That's. As far as I don't know. By the way, have you heard Antonio Tarver now wants to fight Vladimir Klitschko? Another.
Antonio Tarver is not David Hay. Antonio Tarver will fight you.
Yeah, but he had one fight at heavyweight.
He's not going to go in and stand and trade blows. He didn't do that with light heavyweights. That said, we all know what that movie's about.
Right.
Right? He'd like to make some money. If he can get it, good for him. I won't cancel any dinners to watch that fight.
Right. So who do you think should be the next opponent for either of the brothers? Fury, Tyson.
Well, if Ariola can win another couple fights and show that he's willing to come in shape, I think that he might work himself into a fight with Vladimir. As far as Vitaly is concerned, I'm not sure. There's a Finnish fighter out there everybody's excited about. I can't think of his name. Heavyweight, big heavyweight. And Vitaly is a remarkable athlete, coming back from 4 years off. He's still dedicated. He came in to his fight with Adamic because Adamic was smaller, but a good fighter. He came in at his lowest weight in years and years.
Right.
It speaks to his intelligence, to his dedication. But one day, you climb up those stairs, and it's not there anymore. Or there's somebody across from you who's able to expose the fact that it's not there anymore.
Right.
I don't know who that is right now.
Not right now. Do you think, as far as either of the brothers goes, is it the sheer size that will probably cause more problems? Say somebody like Valuev, if he ever gets back in the ring, do you think he'd be able to pose some kind of a challenge to either of the brothers just because of his size?
No.
The smaller, the quicker guy?
Time will take a toll. But fighters who try to check for their flaws, they get in the ring with them, and the ring looks like a telephone booth. Suddenly, it's not that easy, as David Hay found out. So there's nobody around who wouldn't be a big underdog to either of them right now.
Right. But now that you mentioned Ariola, I did like the way Ariola fought Vitaly, despite the fact that he lost. It was a pretty good fight.
Hey, Ariola gives good fights. At the time, I gave him a shot, even though he wasn't in great shape, because he was young. And sometimes when you're young, you can get away with it. And because I thought that Vitaly, who had had a couple of fights since his long layoff, I thought maybe he's not as good as he once was. But he fought a hell of a fight, and he fooled me personally, and he beat up Ariola.
Right. One of the fans asked why do you think Butte is so unnoticed? At 166 super middleweight, he's out there, he's fighting, he's winning. Just doesn't really make the headlines.
Well, I was curious that he wasn't invited into the Showtime tournament
That's
to begin
that's
with.
right.
And I'm not sure if it's they wanted another American in there, or he is such a box office attraction where he is that there was no payoff for him to go in there. But I think he's a very good fighter, but he's not fought the top super middleweights. But he generates money up there, and he's respected in the boxing world. There's a kind of an assumption out there that that Ward, assuming that eventually he wins the tournament, and Butte would have a big fight between them.
Right. What about Hopkins Dawson? What do you think?
I think and Dawson being a boxer like Hopkins is these days, and being taller and younger, I think he's got a chance.
Yeah.
I give him a pretty good chance.
All right. I'm just curious. I never really knew the way it worked, but how are the referees decided for fights? Actually, somebody asked that, and I didn't know the answer, so I think asking you is a good idea. Did they call you and say, "Hey, Larry"?
The commissions, the sanctioning mobs, the officials decide that. I think that fighters have input into that, particularly fighters who have the power of their purses. I think it was pretty clear in the Mayweather-Ortiz situation that Mayweather liked Joe Cortez, and that Ortiz and his handlers, despite their efforts, didn't have the authority to change that. So it's like the business of boxing gets involved. In most cases, it's just commissions making that decision, but in some big fights, there is a back and forth, and maybe in the contract, in negotiations,
Right.
maybe with the commission. That's my understanding.
Right. And what about Mayweather asking Pacquiao to do the random blood testing? His request is outside of what the Nevada State Commission usually asks for. Is this something he's even allowed to ask for, as far as?
He can ask for anything.
I mean, could this actually be part of the contract?
Yes. I mean, and in fact, I think that Mosley and Ortiz submitted to the test because they wanted the fights. And my understanding is that Pacquiao has agreed to do the blood testing, maybe 97.5% of what
Floyd wanted.
What Mayweather wanted. Mayweather apparently believes that nobody can be that good except him,
Right.
unless they were under some kind of influence.
Well, I mean, he was just complaining about the fact that Pacquiao has grown in weight so much, yet was able to keep all of his attributes.
It's not true. It's plainly not true. He does.
They both moved up in the weight about the same. Throughout.
Well, when they were 16 years old, they both were weighed in 112, 115, 116.
Right.
And as they've grown through the years, Mayweather's still a little bigger than him. I think it's a fallacy that Pacquiao has maintained his power. He's had to hit welterweights 50 times to get their attention.
Right.
When he was hitting welterweights, when he was hitting featherweights and junior lightweights, he was knocking them down and sometimes out. But he has had a meteoric rise. Are we going to go back now and check out the DNA of Henry Armstrong, because he was ruling the world from featherweight to almost to middleweight?
Middleweight, yeah.
Or Mickey Walker back in the day, welterweight, middleweight champion, wind up fighting a draw with a future heavyweight champion. There are exceptional athletes.
Right.
And I look at Manny Pacquiao now as a small welterweight. If he absolutely had to, if there was somebody who said, we'll give you even more than all the money in the world, he could fight at 140 and be comfortable.
Right.
There are, in this age of steroids, performance enhancers, I get it. There's always suspicion if anybody bursts out in any sport.
And we've had that in boxing lately too.
And
With,
where I haven't seen is where it's actually made anybody better than they were, that I know of.
Probably makes them a little stronger.
Have you seen anybody in professional prize fighting make a notable rise?
No, nothing like that. Nothing explosive like that.
I asked Margaret Goodman, former Nevada ring physician, about this subject. She told me a number of boxers had come to her, many of whom were not main eventers,
Right.
but who wanted to be,
Right.
and confessed to her that they had used performance-enhancing drugs.
Mhm.
And I said to her, have any of them had noticeably greater power, stamina, any change in their careers?
Right.
Dramatic. She thought for a moment, she said no.
No, huh? So what's...
I think that
Is it
there are
psychological?
some insecure guys. We know that Vargas did it before he fought his big fight against De La Hoya.
Tony seemed to...
He got beaten up.
Right.
We know that Mosley did it in the second fight with De La Hoya. He actually fought a better fight in his first fight.
Right, he did. He did.
So I accept that Roy Jones once tested positive.
Right.
Tony,
So you think it's a psychological boost?
well, I think that, sometimes it's been used in sports, and I think this was its origin to help athletes recover quickly from injuries.
Mhm.
And they found out that they felt stronger and got bigger, and in some sports that's more home runs and more tackles or whatever. All I'm saying is I haven't seen in fights that we know that fighters were tested positive. I haven't seen any change.
Right. So,
I have made weight this morning at 47.
there we go. What are we waiting for?
But even 50 years ago, it wouldn't have helped me that much. All I'm saying is what my eyes see.
Right.
They broke the rules.
Didn't help.
And in Tony's case, he would have won a title, but they discovered that he was on it.
Right.
And
Which fight was that for, by the way?
was it Ruiz? I don't remember who he fought
Yeah.
to win.
Been a while.
To win a title and then lose it in the test.
It wasn't.
And it's possible he might have used it in some other fights because he was found twice,
Right.
and maybe it helped him keep going in some way. But I'm not convinced that it's a magic bullet for fighters in lower weight divisions who are trying to succeed.
Right.
I mean, you can take the other attitude is, this guy went from featherweight to welterweight, and I could make $50 million for fighting him. Hallelujah! I don't care how he did it.
Right. That's actually a lot of people. That's what they're saying. It's it'd probably be, if not the highest ever.
Most people expect that it would be a bonanza financially. Yeah.
Probably Las Vegas wouldn't be able to. Lewis Klitschko fight, the only Lewis Klitschko fight, and your post-fight interview was very, very good, because Lewis kept coming back saying, well, if the fight went on, you remember that interview? He kept saying, well, if that, if this. So he wasn't really comfortable answering your questions.
Well, he felt, again, and look, it's understandable. He was trying to lift the mic, and I was holding on for dear life.
Yeah, I remember he was actually trying to lift it, and you were kind of like, well, this is mine.
I think I might have been up on my toes. He might have almost got me in the air.
Right.
Listen, there was again a somewhat controversial ending, and he wanted it understood, he had a bad eye, but I made him have a bad eye.
Right.
And the crowd was excited and disappointed because it was such an exciting fight. We get it.
What do you think would have happened if the fight had gone on?
I think it was such a terrible cut. I don't know that Vitaly could have been as effective if the fight had gone on as he had been before.
Right.
But it was a really nasty cut.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. He stopped it. Yeah, I mean, he was doing well. It's a shame we didn't get to see this fight
I mean,
in a decisive fashion.
and to this day, Vitaly Klitschko has never been behind in a fight when it was ended.
Right.
The only two fights he lost, he was ahead on the scorecards and were stopped by injuries.
It was Bird, right?
Yeah.
Bird with the shoulder and Lewis with the cut. Well, we're going to see both of them tonight, huh?